Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas. Today, we have two guests for you, the best friend duo of Aminatou Sow and Ann Friedman. Aminatou and Ann are the hosts of the Call Your Girlfriend podcast, and they're the authors of a brand new book on friendship called Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close. As a reminder, everything we discuss on today's episode can be found in the show notes. Before we get to Ann and Aminatou, I just wanted to take a moment to thank the Stacks Pack, the people who make this show possible by contributing monthly to our Patreon and putting their money where their mouth is. And in exchange, they earn perks and inside access to this show. To join the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. This week, I'm saying an extra special thank you to Rachel Blumenfeld, Kelsey Eckberg, Caitlin Sowers, Candace Cisneros, Vicky Preble, Sarah Hauer, Christy Nelson, Emily Reddy, Deb Weintier, Sarah, Lily Herman, A. Lakin, Cassandra Fugel, and Madison Flores. Thank you all so much. All right, let's get to my conversation with Aminatou Sow and Ann Friedman. All right, everybody, I am here with Aminatou Sow and Ann Friedman, the authors of Big Friendship. Ladies, welcome to the Stacks.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. I'm really excited for a lot of reasons, which I will share with you both now. One is that I'm sure everyone says this to you. Your book reminds me of my big friendship with my best friend, but my big friendship with my best friend, Claire, is also an interracial friendship. So I was really excited to have you guys on and we can talk about what that's like kind of from the inside. Cause I know a lot of interviews you do, it's like, why is it important that you have a Black friend? You know, so I'm excited to actually like dive in. But we'll start where we always start, which is in 30 seconds or so, tell us about the book.
Okay, is the clock starting now?
Yeah, the clock starts whenever you want it
30, 29, 28, 20.
I immediately start sweating, like knowing I only...
I love also that my idea of a countdown is to count the clock down and not up. Okay.
No, that makes sense as we're running out of time. In fact, we are
You
running
guys are
out
at
of
like
time
8
right now.
seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. And goodbye. Big Friendship is a memoir of our friendship, and it also has some expert interviews and some pop psychology, like asides, and we were very excited to write it together.
And I think we're really hoping that it is a prompt for people to think about and invest in their own friendships, and also on a bigger picture level for us all to figure out how we can elevate friendship on a cultural level and a societal level to the place of importance that it should really have.
Right. Because one of the things that was really interesting about the book is that there's not a lot of research out in the world, or a lot of people out in the world talking about friendships in a kind of, I guess, quote unquote, serious way. I was just going to say, I think that this book kind of opened my eyes to that idea. Like I'd never thought about, how come I've never read anything about friendship before? Did you guys kind of have that experience when you sat down to write the book? Like, where's the research? Like, what can we pull from?
I mean, I think that when we sat down to write the book, we were very excited to pull from the research. I don't think that we quite understood how little of it there was that was relevant,
Yeah.
Because so much of just like our own natural curiosity is to always, we like love to look at studies. We love to, we love facts in this relationship, more than feelings, which is how we get in trouble. But, I was really excited when we started, at the top of this process being like, yes, like we're going to get to write this, have this narrative arc and really, flex my writing muscle in that way. But I was also really excited to actually do the research. And I, on this very nerdy level, I was like, yes, a book with a bibliography. I am so excited. And then you start looking at the sources and you're like, what? Like all of these studies are, there's 7 students in a Hong Kong boarding school. Everyone is deeply focused on, very young children of a certain age. And a lot of the bigger questions that we were asking ourselves, it was really hard to find to like find anywhere where academia was taking that seriously. And I think that the thing that was like exciting about that though is that I think that for me at least, it really helped reframe a lot of just like shame and lack that I had, you know, of just like, oh, maybe I'm just not a uniquely bad friend. Maybe it is true that as a society, we are, you know, we're just like not really investing in this relationship and in this institution in the way that we should be paying attention to it.
Right. Did you guys find that there was a difference in America versus other countries on how they deal with friendship and how they think about friendship, or was it kind of across the board?
You know, our friendship is really founded in and like in some ways rooted in a U.S. cultural context. And the book is not a global survey of the ways all sorts of people and cultural experiences are affecting friendship. But that said, so I don't have anything smart to tell you in terms of like, you know, differences country to country, but I will say that I am very much interested in it. And, you know, along with all of the other gaps in research we found, like, this was a big one. And I think in part because, it's so understudied. It's not like you're comparing data sets in different countries. It's like, or in different places. It's like they're just lacking, you know, across the board.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I listened to you guys on a bunch of other podcasts as part of research, but also I happen to love Sam Sanders. I happen to love Keep It. I happen to love Bad on Paper. So it was sort of like, oh, I'm researching, but I've actually already listened to a lot of these. But one of the things that I think it was on Sam Sanders' show you guys talked about was he asked about gender and about men friendships versus female friendships. And I noticed that the book is under women's studies on Amazon. What do you think that's about?
Oh my God. That is about, Anne, what's that word called? Remember the publishing word?
Oh, the bisect? The bisect?
Yes, the bisect. That thing. Yeah, like it's a big scam basically.
Yeah.
Of, like, where do books like live? And, you know, and like publishers like at their own discretion, like get to decide where the book lives. I will say that like personally, you know, for the two of us, one big conversation that we had like throughout the writing and the selling of this book and then the promotion of this book is that it was really important to us that it was not like solely couched under like, you know, friendships about women, because the minute that you do that, it has implications like across the board.
Right.
So, you know, so I feel, I definitely feel some type of way about it, but I think that, you know, it's also like the context of that is larger than just like, how do we both feel about it? You know, there are all these other weird like publishing ISBN forces at play for
right.
how that plays out.
Right.
You know, but I very much like when we sat down to write this book, we knew that was you know, that was like a part of the shelf that they would try to push us into. And we understand why, like culturally and also for like, you know, like book marketing purposes. But that is something that like we are resisting through and through and through again. Like even in the book, we write about our big friendships with men,
right.
you know, and with people who are not women. And it's frustrating, but I think that it also like prompts this larger question for me, like, which I hope that like as a culture, we are all asking, that is, why, like, even for a relationship that is not taken as seriously as it could, why are women the only people who are afforded to really have that kind of level of emotional investment, you know? And Sam Sanders asked about this like so much, and I know that he talks about this a lot, you know, like on his show, and it's a question that I think really, really, really needs to be answered, because friendship cannot be the province alone of women. Like if we were saying that it is a life-affirming relationship that has, you know, deep consequences for your well-being and for your wellness, then we want that for everyone.
Right. And it's interesting. I'm sure, you know, sexism, of course, or misogyny plays into this, that this idea that women are the holders of friendship, or they're the only ones that can have these deep, major friendships. And then also there's this lack of research. And I think that those things must be connected, right? Like in some way, there's some connection between the fact that we think that this is a quote unquote woman's area and that it's something that is not worthy of study or, you know, scientific backing sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's also an area that's outside the kind of like, you know, hetero nuclear family, like patriarchal structure that like, you know, because we do not prioritize friendship on a level of like paperwork and politics and like the ways that we have kind of agreed upon as a society to let people indicate who's important to them. Like friendship is shut out from that by and large. And in some ways, like that's one thing that's so great about it. It gives it a lot of radical potential. And on the flip side, it is something that has led it to be really devalued. And I think you're right that this sense that, you know, maybe it is somehow feminized to have emotionally deep relationships with people who are not your family or not your spouse certainly plays into that. And, you know, we interviewed the feminist historian Stephanie Kuntz in the book, who talked a little bit about the ways that perceptions of friendship and expectations for what role it should have in your life have been shaped by the broader norms about family and marriage, because those have, you know, throughout U.S. history been primary, and everything else has been peripheral. And so that was extremely illuminating. And, you know, you like to think that just because you don't hold those values, you are exempt. But the truth is, like, we are all subject to the ways society is organized in this kind of top-down way and have to really fight against it.
Yeah. Okay, I want to shift a little bit to the actual writing of the book. I'm curious, how did you guys start writing? Because you wrote together. The book has a collective voice, which I think is really awesome. And I don't think I've ever seen it pulled off in as well as you guys did, or even ever at all in this sort of way. So I'm curious kind of how you sat down to start writing the book. And then you guys are a long distance relationship. So I'm curious how you guys wrote, if you wrote it apart, if you guys got together, if you had a Google Doc going. I know you're both very organized, so I'm just sort of curious about the actual writing process.
Oh man, this whole book brought to you by Google Drive. It was frustrating at times. It was not like frustrating is like truly like it is really underplaying it.
Okay.
Anytime Google Drive had an issue, I wanted to jump off a bridge, but. You know, I'm like, if anyone is listening to this who knows of like good collaborative software for writers, like please tell us. Otherwise, I'm putting that on the roadmap of things that we're going to work on one day. It is really hard to work with someone just outside of the logistics of the two body problem. Like it's just hard to do it even via the technology. But largely we wrote the book together, like in the same place. And yeah, we don't live in the same city. So we had to make some time to go away together. And the first time really that we ironed out the kinks in the process was when we were working on the proposal, because we had to submit all of these materials, including a sample chapter. And that was really the first time I think that we were really trying to figure out like what a process could be where this could work. And so a lot of our, we've talked about this, a lot, so I'm sorry if it's repetitive and boring, but so much of our process just like involved outlining together like extensively, and that just usually means like talking forever, which is always my favorite part of the process. And yeah, it's like, you know, talking through it, and then we would go separately and write to that outline. Usually, like, you know, we were like in the same house or in the same room, sometimes the same table, however you need to get the words out, just get the words out. And then we would come back together. We'd give each other usually either a word count, or we would have a time limit.
Okay.
Depending on what the workload was for that week or that session or whatever, and then come back together, read out loud to each other what we had written, and then start the process of knitting together those two versions into one coherent version.
How long did it take you guys to write the book?
I mean, this was the main thing we did in 2019. There was definitely some work in writing the proposal and kind of the big picture framing of it that we did in 2017 when we first started thinking about it, and in 2018 when we wrote the proposal and sold it. But yeah, most of the work in 2019. And then we had a feverish week of revisions at the very beginning of this year, which was like 7 work weeks crammed into one. So it's really hard to answer questions about time when it comes to a process like this.
Sure,
it's like,
sure.
we've been thinking about it forever. And also the answer is kind of 1 year.
Okay, so what about the writing process came easily for you guys versus, I mean, you've outlined some of the things that were really challenging and frustrating, but what stuff was sort of like, wow, we nailed that. No problem.
I wish I felt that way about anything in my life.
Seriously.
I will say that, that writing the more like, the high level idea stuff, that came a lot easier than writing the narrative parts, for me at least. Where it's like, okay, like writing about ideas, I can do this for days.
Right.
That part of it, or really just like coming up with some, like a cohesive, like kind of rubric for how we've been thinking about it. And, and I think that's due to a couple of things. Like one, we've been talking to each other about these ideas for a long time. So just finally sitting down to put them on paper was also, it felt like very cathartic. But I think that for me also just like the way that my brain is organized and the way that I, that I think, it's like that stuff is a lot easier to tap into than, than the narrative parts. And so that was a little bit more of a challenge, but they were both like really fun to do.
Yeah. And I think in general, the last half of the book was less revised than the first half of the book, in part because we got better at this weird writing style, this weird joint writing style we have. But also I think because we were, in some ways more excited to tell the story about the hard parts because it felt like less explored territory. And while we knew the parts about the early stages of our friendship, and about the early stages of friendship generally were important to include, I think, we got a lot of feedback on early drafts that those first couple chapters were clunkier and harder. And then the book really started to find its stride in the middle. And so the frantic revision week that I mentioned in early January was us completely tearing up and redoing the intro and first 4 chapters.
So interesting.
Yeah.
That's really, I think that's really interesting. One of the things that, you guys talk about in the later half, I don't know if this is a spoiler, I think it's in the introduction, that you guys sort of have a part of your friendship that gets rocky and you sort of lose touch with one another and it's sort of awkward between you two and sort of just like a bad situation. I don't know. It's just not the best times of your friendship. And that sort of is what you're talking about that makes up the latter part of the book. And I'm curious if getting vulnerable about your friendship and public about that part of your friendship has carried over at all into your podcast, Call Your Girlfriend? Because on Call Your Girlfriend, you guys aren't nearly as, vulnerable about the interior of your relationships and your feelings. So I'm wondering if writing about it and putting it out in the world has changed at all how you approach that stuff on your podcast.
That's such a good question. I think that part of why we're not vulnerable on the podcast is that it's not like it's not a gab fest where we just talk to each other about each other's feelings. I think that ever since part of why we were excited about making a podcast was not to I'm not trying to get on a microphone and just overshare every day about what's going on with me. It really was about talking about these ideas that we find interesting, so that's always something that I'm always fascinated by, because I think that there is just this expectation that when two women are talking to each other, they're just gossiping about, boys and clothes or the insides of how they feel. And I'm no, some of us legitimately talk about books and we talk about policy and we talk about whatever. So I don't feel a pressure to be more vulnerable there. But I will say that some of the conversations that we have on the show, I think are actually very vulnerable. Consistently for the first 2 or 3 years of our show, we had a menstruation update, where that involved us talking about our own menstruation. One of our most popular episodes is an episode that we do about poop, and we talk about our money all of the time. I'm is that not vulnerable?
Right.
So it truly is, I think that just depends. But part of why we wanted to write a book is because the podcast is not the right venue to explore all of the things that we wanted to write about in the book. It's just not the correct format. And we are people who, like, we think about that all the time, where it's like, okay, like, here's an idea I want to explore. Where's the best place to do that? Even the summer right now, we've been like very closely doing episodes for this series that we're calling Summer of Friendship, where everyone is pegged to a chapter of the book. And, I'm like very proud of that work, and I'm very good I feel very good about that work, but it does not have the same effect and does not have the same resonance as actually like reading it in a book.
Right. That's a great point. I listened to a lot of the book on audio, and it's such a good audiobook. You both narrate, you bring in voices of the researchers and other people that you talk to about their friendships. How did that idea come to you guys, doing it in that way, as opposed to either having an outside person read the whole thing or just the two of you? Because it is sort of podcast-ish.
Thank you for asking us about the audiobook. I really... Finally. We've done so many interviews and no one wants to talk about it. We want to talk about it.
I am obsessed with the audiobook. I am a new mom of twins. And so sometimes it's really hard for me to read everything because I just don't have the time to have my hands holding something. But I made so much baby food while I was listening to your book because I didn't want to stop and have to deal with the baby. So I was like to my husband, you deal with them. I'm going to do baby food. And I think I did like 4 hours of baby food listening to you guys talk. And so I'm a huge fan of the audiobook.
Well, thank you. It poses a little bit of a problem, this voice that we adopt in the book, because we definitely didn't want just one of us to read it, and we wanted it to feel like both of our voices were a part of it, in the way that both of us are truly invested 50-50 in the ideas and prose in this book. And so we also didn't want to read about ourselves in the third person.
Right.
The idea of being like, Anne felt bad is just like my skin crawls saying that out loud.
Right.
And so we kind of devised this way where, not in every single sentence, but by and large, I read the parts that are Aminatou specific. Aminatou reads the parts that are Anne specific, and then we divide up the we parts between us. And then, as you say, we use interview clips or incorporate the voices of the experts we talk to, in part because I always just love to hear people in their own voices. Like, a great example is our friend Dio, who introduced us. There's something special about not just reading her words, but like hearing the way she speaks them. And it just seemed like an audiobook is such a great opportunity to add this layer where it's not just like, hello, a straight read of the book, but, allowing for there to be a soundtrack and some like different level of like emotional experience through that, and hearing these voices. It just seemed, it was just exciting to us.
Yeah, it's pulled off beautifully. I think the audiobook, it's a really good example of the potential of audiobooks. I think sometimes, especially nonfiction audiobooks, can be really dry, and there's this idea that people want to listen to that. And as someone who listens to a good amount of audiobooks, this was exciting and fun and fresh. And so I'm really grateful for you guys taking the time to think about the potential of what this book could be for listeners. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind-the-scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to traceythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the stacks. One of the things that you guys are sort of famous for, aside from your book and your friendship and your podcast, is this idea of shine theory. So will you guys kind of explain it briefly to the audience? And then I have a few questions about it.
Shine theory is the operating principle of our friendship, where really early on we just started telling each other, I don't shine if you don't shine. And, part of why I think it is resonating so much with people is that it's a practice that so many people already have in their lives. This idea that instead of competing with people, you're actually going to just collaborate with them, and that you are going to pool your resources together to, to accomplish like the things that you want to accomplish in life, and they don't just have to be along professional lines.
Right. I'm wondering, as someone who, I think a lot of people, especially probably women and other people who are in marginalized groups, have found that shine theory is something that they rely on as a means for survival, especially, definitely professionally. And I'm wondering if, I should say it this way, for myself, I sometimes struggle because I am a competitive person by nature. Like, I like to compete with myself and with others. And sometimes it's hard for me to remember that I can't do it unless I have people with me who do it with me and help me and show me the way and answer my questions, and then I turn around and reach out and help them in return. So I'm wondering the ways that you guys have struggled with practicing shine theory, or if you have at all.
I have to be honest that it is not like a struggle for me personally to practice shine theory, because I am not this idea that I love that you said that you were competitive in that way. And you said, you were like, I'm competitive with myself and I'm competitive with others. That was like a thing that it's when I started going to American school, I was like, the kids here are like wild. It's just like, the rat race. That's like a commentary on like American culture. I'm like, I'm not quite ready to unpack.
Okay.
But I the competing, but I think that it's important to like distinguish like who you are competing against. Right. And so competing with yourself, I'm like, absolutely. Like, I am doing that all of the time. Competing with others, not so much like an instinct that I have. And I don't think that it's like rooted in a virtue. I think that it is like a different cultural context. And some of it is also like, it's like a different kind of trauma.
Right.
So I want to offer that up. But in the book, we give this example of this Olympic marathoner.
Right.
Shalane Flanagan, who is quite literally an athlete, right? Anytime people talk about competition, I'm like, are you an athlete or not? And, and she practices shine theory. She, in fact, has she invented her own competition. Instead of like going to run against men, she was like, no, I want to run against more women and I'm going to train them. All of those women are her competition and they're all better for it.
Yeah.
She brought her entire cohort. So I think that it's like this concept of like, it's like what is competition for and what does it do? I think that saying that you want to practice shine theory, it doesn't mean that like people are not in the pursuit of excellence all of the time.
Right.
I think that it really is about putting into contrast, like, like what are you competing against? And for me, I'm like, I'm trying to compete against capitalism and like the white heteropatriarchy,
right?
Because those things are like, that is like total bullshit. And so I think that like once you frame it that way, it becomes like less of a question of like, like, am I envious of what my friends have? And that is, I'm like, yes, like I have found myself envious of, like other people's status or opportunities they've had or whatever. But the reason that it doesn't sting as much or that it's not as consuming is that in the framework of shine theory, you know, instead of stewing about that, you decide that that's information for what you want for your life, and you feel free to ask them about how they got there.
Right. Right. No, I think that's such a great point. The competitive thing, I'm like sitting here thinking, I'm like, gosh, what trauma is that from? It's true because I know, I mean, I definitely am a competitive person. You know, I think some people are just more motivated by that. You know, like when I go out on a run, I do a thing that I call hunt, which is I find strangers that are ahead of me and try to catch up to them. Like, it's,
oh my God.
It's just like, that's like what motivates me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just one of those people. Like you know, that's just who I am. But I think that at least for me, it's part of like, part of practicing shine theory for me is releasing the scarcity model that we've been taught so much in our lives, especially as, like I said, people who are in groups that aren't, you know, white, cis, hetero men. And so I think like that the scarcity model versus the shine theory is something that I have to deprogram in myself, you know, in my competitive nature. It's like, okay, remember, we can't all be great if we're like fighting amongst ourselves. You know, we've got to lift each other up. And, you know, so it's just an interesting thing when I think about it, because it's something that I want to practice in theory at all times, but it's something that I catch myself being petty, you know, and being like, that's not great. You're not helping right now. You know,
well, it's also the difference between feelings and practice, right? Like,
right.
Or sort of what you are experiencing in your own head versus like what you are doing in collaboration with people. It's like, you know, for me, like seeing someone running ahead of you and being like, I want to catch up to that person and beat them. Like, that's an experience you're just having alone, you know, like that's not, that's
like,
not
I don't run past them and say like, fuck you, guy.
Yeah. You're not like clubbing them at the knees as you go by and being like, you know, actually taking them out. At least I don't think that's what you're implying.
Right.
And I think that's why we really take pains to stretch to stress that it is a practice and that, you know, you get to choose what you do with the feelings that you have. And so it's less about saying, you know, I'm never going to feel jealous again, or I'm never going to feel motivated by competition. But it is saying like, okay, well, what is the action I actually want to complete in the world?
Right. Have you guys, or have you both noticed a difference in the way that you're seeing shine theory practice either for yourselves or in your circles of friends in this moment of coronavirus, and also since this resurgence of people paying attention to racism in America? Has there been any change in your communities?
I don't know. Like, you know, I'm like, who's my community? My community is Anne.
We only talk to each other now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My community is like very my community is like very consistent. So no, like I'm not. I guess no. I would say that yeah. I'm not noticing that. You know, I just like want to go back to like one tiny thing too that you had said, because it's sparking me to think about something else. You know, I think that part of the issue of shine theory is that people think that it also means that you are rooting for everyone. You know, I think about Issa Rae being like, I'm rooting for everyone Black. Yeah. And at whatever that award show was, and I was like, yes, she was saying that she was rooting for everyone Black at the Emmys or whatever the award was, you know, but I'm like, I'm not rooting for everyone Black all of the time. You know, I'm like, Black people also do mediocre things. Like, that's fine to say that out loud. But I think that there is just an expectation that you are just like neutering like every ambition that you have, and that you're elevating like every single, you know, like person in the world. Part of shine theory, I think, is like remembering that you are talking about people that you are accountable to.
Right.
You know? So it's like people who are already in your network. It's people that you know, and it's people that you are trying to build together. It's not just this like nebulous other in general.
Right. It's not anyone who just slides in your DMs.
Yeah. I'm like, it's not like everyone who says that they're from a marginalized group. I'm like, guess what? Like sometimes like we are not amazing, and that's fine.
Right.
I'm just, you know, I'm like, we're just trying to make a world where, you know, like people from marginalized groups can also be mediocre and like fail upwards. I was like, I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a big,
Same.
And it's not a big deal. Whatever that Bella Abzug like Schlemiel quote is, I always think about that all the time. But yeah, so like back to your question, I don't know that I am personally like noticing that it's being practiced like differently in my community, but I think that like part of, you know, coronavirus is like actually a frame of like the scarcity is like very much it is very exposed right now.
Right.
Like you just like you see it, you know, and I think that I strain to like see who can even do okay in this moment if you are not someone who is generous to your community because you expect them to be generous with you at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
It's like it is really, I think it is really calling on all of us to just take stock of what your resources are, you know, and you know, I'm not trying to be the people who are like hoarding toilet paper all the
right.
time. I am trying to, you know, I'm like trying to make sure that we all have enough for the next week. And so, you know, I'm like, in that sense, like, I feel that, you know, in my community, we are thriving.
Yeah.
But it's a tough moment.
I've also been thinking about the ways that it sort of forces, in a way that a lot of distance in relationships does, forces a more explicit conversation than you might otherwise be having. And I'm thinking about the ways that, you know, people who might have considered each other family, even though the designation was legally friend, have like been able to form pods or like be more like intentional about the way that like life is actually structured, or the way that you know, discussing with friends like, oh, like this is what I'm comfortable with right now in terms of like my safety, or this is what I need in terms of social interaction. Like, where are you at? What can I do for you? There is something where, because you are not in the day to day, and because you are not like, you know, just inferring things from behavior, that things have to be put into words and made, like the social contract, I guess, is sort of more explicit for some of these relationships. And that's a little bit different than shine theory, but I do think that it's something that I've noticed and appreciated and benefited from.
Right. That's a great point. Sort of communicating and our levels of comfort and what's okay, and kind of talking to people in ways that we definitely, or at least I definitely was not previous to this, like being explicit in those kind of communications. That's a great point. I'm getting frustrated because I have like a million things I want to talk to you guys about. And I also have a million other things that I want to talk to you about. And I'm like looking at all my questions being like, how are we going to make this happen? I'm like, I have so much I want to talk about.
You're going to land the plane.
Yeah.
You're going to land the plane.
We're going to make it happen. I'm definitely gonna have to miss things, but I mentioned this at the top, and I do want to talk about sort of the being part of an interracial friendship, because as someone, like I said, my best friend is a white woman, and it's not something that I had ever really thought about. I grew up in in Oakland, in the Bay Area, which is a place that is, you know, notorious for having lots of, you know, interracial families and friends and all of this stuff. And so it wasn't something that I ever really thought about. I've had plenty of friends of different ethnicities. So I'm sort of curious, Anne, this question is, I guess, more directed at you because of your where you grew up. Was it something that you was becoming best friends or big friends with Aminatou? Was that something that you were consciously like, oh, I now have a very close Black friend? Or was it something that, you know, I know that sounds kind of like a weird question, but I am curious about it, especially in this moment where so many people are using this line of like, I'm just now learning about racism. And I put all that in major air quotes. I'm just curious what that was like. If that was like anything for you. I'm curious is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, we're now talking about 11 years ago when we met. And so I will fully own up to the fact that I don't know how accurate I can be about like what my internal dialogue was about this stuff way back when. But I will say that when I reflect on it and what I remember is actually like feeling so excited that I felt like we were so similar. And, you know, we write about this in the book where like, yeah, you could write for an hour and still not list all of the differences between us. And, you know, starting with something as profound as race. And I think that, you know, I obviously like knew that Aminatou is a Black woman, like when we became friends, but the sense of like, oh goody, I have a Black friend or something, like did not, like that is not a thought or a framework that I had. I'm fairly certain of that. I mean, I think it was really, if anything, I think my experience in the early days of our friendship was almost the other direction to to the detriment of our friendship and to the and like, you know, to the detriment of my own behavior in our friendship, which is to say that I really allowed myself to believe that we had such similar experiences in the world, even though I was very aware of, you know, race and racism in this bigger picture way. I was able to hear stories about what she experienced out in the world and sometimes witness it firsthand and say like, aha, that is anti-Black racism. But in terms of how do the racial differences in our experiences lead us to behave differently within this friendship? I think I was very ignorant about that, and perhaps even willfully ignorant about it, like just wanting so much to have like the specifics of our friendship feel special or feel separate. And I don't know what I would have said if you had asked me back then, like, what do you think it means that that for Aminatou to be so close to you, a white person? Like, I really truly can't tell you, because I also think that I have really grown and learned and changed a lot since then. In large part from, you know, I've benefited from Aminatou explaining herself or explaining her experience. And so I don't know. That is a very long-winded way of saying it's hard for me to tell you, but I definitely did not view it as some kind of like triumph that we were of different races, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird question. And I have to be honest, when I was preparing for this interview, I want to talk about this part of your relationship, but it's actually the way that I approach a lot of my interviews is just to kind of be generally curious and to ask questions that I'm interested in hearing the answers for. And this was the one part of your book that, as someone who has been living in a, I guess, interracial big friendship, was something that I was having a hard time figuring out what my questions were for you about this. And I wonder, you know, I don't know, there's not really a question there, but it's a difficult thing, because when you're in the relationship, it's hard to understand what it might mean for people around you. I don't even know if that makes sense. But that's what I was sort of grappling with in preparing today. And I don't know if you guys have even noticed that people have received either of you differently because of your friendship with one another. Is that something that you've experienced?
I mean, I just want to say that I appreciate you asking that question, because it is something that I am always curious about, you know, and I think that it's fair to say that a lot of Black people are curious about, because, you know, like, our own lives and identities are always subjected to this kind of, you know, like, I think that you feel that it's a kind of impolite question, but I'm like, actually, like, white people ask us these kinds of impolite questions
all the time,
and don't like think about it twice.
Sure.
You know? So it's interesting to me that you are, you know, like, you were still hesitant in asking it, but I think that it's worth asking, because I think that when a lot of interracial friendships are on the rocks, that is the first thing that you ask of yourself. It's like, oh, like, are you seeing me as a person, or was I some sort of like a good checkbox for your like liberal, like cool white person box, you know? So like, I will confess that is something that I have thought a lot. And I'm, you know, and I'm like, also like, I've never vocalized that to Anne before, but I like think about it.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's hard to, at least for me, to ask the question. I wasn't hesitant because I was hesitant because I don't feel that I had figured out how to articulate it well, but not hesitant in the spirit of the question, if that makes sense.
I hear you. I just also don't know, like, if there is a better way to articulate it than like, hey, are you being real, or is this just some like fucked up checkbox thing that you're
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
totally.
Because that's like the spirit of the question. But I am like all here for like you know, I'm like, ask like what you really want, not the like the correct like way to say it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is like a ludicrous question.
Yeah.
But to your question of like, you know, like, is it, you know, like, are we noticing that it's being perceived differently? I think yes. Like, there was no way that we were going to write this book and not have an entire chapter on race. Like, there was just no way that was going to happen. And even as we were writing it, I was already mourning like the future experience. Like, I was already dreading the future experience of being misunderstood, you know? Like, I was like, oh yeah, every dynamic that I'm writing about here with Anne is also a dynamic that I actually have with a white reader, and they don't realize that, you know? Like, the same thing is happening, and it's like the same dynamic that I will have with like a white interviewer down the line. And you know, like anytime we're asked about these questions, it's always around like, oh yeah, how can white people have more black friends? Or Amina, tell us about the particular pain of like being friends with a white person.
Right.
Because my eyes have been open to racism 17 minutes ago.
Right.
Please tell me everything. And I usually like really resist like even engaging with those questions because I really, you know, I was like, first of all, race does not only affect friendship between interracial people. Like,
Of course.
white friends, like only two white friends. I'm like, those two should be interrogating how race is affecting their friendship more than anyone
Right,
else. I was
right.
like, oh. I'm like, this is a site of racial politics if I've ever seen one. You know, so there's that. And then there is also just, you know, I think that, and I like, you know, there is so much still to say about it, you know, and how do you just like pack it like tightly and like within a chapter and feel that you have, you know, you've set the boundary markers like correctly and then everything is there. And also recognizing that, you know, like all black people are not like a monolith and all white people are not a monolith. And also all interracial relationships don't involve just white people and black people
Right.
and blah, 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 blah. You can unspool that thread forever and ever and ever. And so, you know, I like to reiterate like something that Anne said earlier, like this book really is like an invitation to a conversation because I'm like, this is what we are learning and this is what we are doing. And here is how it's been painful. And, you know, we suspect that some of these dynamics are at play with other people, but it is not as clear cut as just like, okay, you know, talk about it and have a drink and keep talking about it. You know, like the practice of it is very different than the theory of it. And, you know, and I'm like, and racial dynamics are always at work in, you know, our relationship, the two of us. Like, they're at work, like, while we do a book tour. They're at work, like, you know, in the quiet moments of our friendship as well. And that is something that, you know, I think we are both, like, constantly just, like, grappling with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really well said. Okay. We're going to shift slightly because we have to talk about, like, both of your writing processes. Sort of. These questions are more just because I'm a voyeur. Very important. I need to know if either of you have writing snacks or beverages or rituals around where you write, if you have a candle going, if there's anything about like how you're writing. I need to know.
I mean, we ate so many snacks writing this book.
Thank you. I love a snack.
Every time we went away together, or kind of really hunkered down for a week of writing, there was a shopping trip at the beginning. And yes, there was some meal planning. We were very compatible kitchen sharers, but like there also always had to be, you know, like when you're staying in a house, so the stuff doesn't really go in the cupboards and there's like a corner of the kitchen counter where you just pile the snacks or whatever. that was very much in effect when we went away to write. So many gummy options. I love popcorn, which I will make with an air popper at home, but we would buy bagged when we went away because practicality.
Right.
Usually a chip of some kind. Usually, what else? Like we definitely like had some fruit options usually.
Yeah, always like there was always like a low-key like leathery fruit situation. We love a Swedish fish. We love like a nut or a popcorn that is dusted with like a savory situation.
Okay.
So like, you know, like wasabi, sriracha, like that family is always good. I think we're like very compatible vegetable people also, Anne. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, I love parsley, so every meal has to involve parsley.
Fresh herbs only. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, but like to your question about other rituals, we also like we definitely brought some like travel candles and travel incense on this trip.
Okay.
And it's funny because I never think of them as like you know, like getting ready to write. It's mostly like, how can I make this environment cozy for my friend? And now I wonder about this because I was talking to another friend who is a writer and she was telling me that her like, you know, like I'm ready to write is she has this one particular candle that she lights and then she like sits at her desk and she's like, this is my writing candle. I'm like, wow, I had not thought of that. And, you know, and I'm like, who knows what that process looks like for me, but there's so much of the rituals around writing this book really revolved around just like making each other comfortable, you know, and it's funny because I like, until you asked that, I had not like fully considered that.
It's funny that you say that about the candle, because that is fully a solo writing ritual that I have of like, it's not a special candle, but like I will light something before I sit down to write, because like, I don't know, just like a small action to take is definitely something that, yeah, I will always do.
I do a stretch. Like that's my, like, I'm sitting down to write. Whenever I have a thing to write at home, I'm like, okay, I will clean anything. Like it could be like just the sink or whatever. I just feel like I need to have finished something, and then I do a stretch, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to tackle this.
I love this. Part of the reason I love this question is because I have interviewed so many authors, and everyone has something different to say, from I don't drink or eat or touch anything to, like you guys, I have 1,000,005 snacks. I drink this beverage. I do it this. I have it this. So I just am always so curious. I love it. I love it. Another question that I also love, because I think people forget that even if you're a wonderful writer, you still have flaws. So what is a word that you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Oh, I have like 100 of those.
I have
Sandwich,
1,000,000.
Acknowledgement.
That's one of mine.
Entrepreneur. Like, and there were so many words that I remember in the document just leaving for you being like, the red squiggle would take care of this. Like, I don't know how to write this word.
Oh my God. Mine is relevant. I can never remember if it's spelled with an A or an E, which, like, LOL at my word being relevant. But and when I'm handwriting something, like for some reason, I always write with an E, like as if I am an old English like bard or something. Like, I don't know why my hand wants to do that, but like if you receive a letter from me, there will often be a scribble at the end of with, where I have crossed out the E that I instinctively wrote.
That's so funny. I love that it's different if you're writing it by hand. That's amazing. Wow. This is very relevant to your friendship. You guys became friends through a Gossip Girl watch party. I'm curious, are you the kinds of friends that assign who's the Serena and who's the Blair, or no?
No one is the Serena and the Blair. These people are all like, they're like
horrible.
Need help.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm the Serena, so I definitely love being a Serena.
You are so not a Serena. You are so much. I want so much more than that for you.
Did you have like a scooter accident on Mykonos or whatever she did? Like,
I just really liked her fashion style. I mean, I just like wanted that giant hair, like that giant head of just all this hair. You know, I'm really a big fan of Serena, but I did go back and rewatch the show during the beginning of COVID. Turns out, didn't really hold up. Like,
I mean, it wasn't holding up as we were watching it, you know, like the show literally is like premised on one person being like a serial sexual abuser, you know, and everyone is like cute teenagers.
But at the time it was sort of like, this is like fun and terrible. And when I watched it this time, I was like, oh, this is just like terrible. And the clothes weren't fun anymore. Like, I feel like when I watched it in real time, I was like, oh, like, look at their fancy, like, cool clothes. And I was watching it this time thinking like, that was cute. Like, I thought that was a good look. So I don't know. Definitely doesn't hold up. I am curious, do you guys read alike?
What do you mean? Do we read like the same types of books?
Do you like to read the same books? Do you guys do book clubbing type activities with one another? Like, oh, you have to read this, or anything like that?
We are not active members of a book club, but
I will never be.
I meant more between you two.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
like,
I mean,
you'll say, I
think
love
we
this.
We definitely give each other book recommendations. Not as much as I would like, Anne, if I'm honest. Like, if we're really gonna air out the cracks in this relationship today on the stacks, I think it's more of we definitely ask each other a lot what we are reading, but I don't remember the last time that we gave each other a book to read and said like, oh yeah, like I enjoy this, you should read this too, like at the same time. So that's a thing. But we send each other books like constantly. So I really appreciate that. Like, one of my favorite things is like receiving a book from Anne with like a Post-it or a note like inside of it that is the exact part that she knows that I will appreciate.
That's awesome.
That's my love language, exactly like targeted right there. It's like, please read these like 400 pages, but I sent them to you for these 2 lines right here. So yeah, but we are constantly reading. I wish we were talking about it more somehow. less interviews, more reading books.
That's my personal motto these days. Less interviews, more reading books. Doesn't quite work out. Do you remember what you were reading, watching, listening to while you were writing Big Friendships? What sort of things were kind of permeating in your world?
I mean, I can tell you that one of our writing retreats was in Vermont, and I read like this house had like the Jackie Collins like Hollywood husbands, Hollywood wives, like true trash, where I was like, okay, now that we have completely depleted our brains, I am going to read this for half an hour and then fall asleep. Like I don't have anything like deep and wonderful to report in terms of my consumption of other things during the writing process.
No, we always say that whenever when we were writing this book, every book that we read was the best book we had ever read before,
including Hollywood Husbands.
Including Hollywood Husbands. I think that some of this too, though, is that these writing periods were so intense that the thing that made me happy at the end of every day was just like, okay, we just spent like 12 hours together. I can go for a walk alone, or I can read this book alone, and it's fine not to do something together. That was actually some of my favorite parts of that process. I remember also in Vermont, Anne, when we did that puzzle together, that was like very fun. I was like, yeah, like this puzzle it was so hard. It was so hard, but it was such a deeply satisfying thing. And we tried watching TV when we were like out of the country once. I forget like what. Yeah, we like watched a couple movies, but the stuff that I remember really is the alone together time, because that is the true. Oh wow, I really like this person. We are tired. We are not talking to each other for a couple hours, and no one is afraid. This is great.
We took a day off and went to see John Wick 3 in the theater. Like that is really.
Oh yeah, that was great.
That's awesome. Do you have? If someone reads Big Friendship, they love Big Friendship, what is a book or are a few books that you might recommend to them that you think not necessarily on the same topic, but just are in conversation with the work that you've done?
Strong recommendation for a new book called How We Show Up by Mia Birdsong, which it is very much in conversation with our book, and it feels like it's just kind of pulling the lens out a little bit more, where we write a lot about dynamics within a friendship. And in her book, it's kind of about how friendships fit into all the other stuff in life and community. And so that is, it's relatively new, and we're gonna have her on Call Your Girlfriend in a couple weeks, because it's like such a perfect fit. But that's a big one that I have been recommending.
Yeah. Also, if you've never read Sula by Toni Morrison,
that's our book club pick right now.
Perfect. I love to hear that. Adults, like complicated friendships, but also like truly, and like Toni Morrison, the best writer we have had. So just read it. Read it.
So good.
And that is. That's that. We also read Mama Day, recommended by our editor. And that was also like great. Not like, I was like not in conversation with our book, but another, a book that I will always think about when I think about our writing process. And Gloria Naylor, just like iconic. So it's worth it.
Those are great recommendations. Okay, I have just two more questions. One is, do you know what comes next for you as a Big Friendship, as far as will there be another book? Do you have something else in the works coming our way? I know that's sort of a pushy question considering you just birthed this first book, but do people want to know? Is there something coming for us soon, either book or not?
Well, I will confidently say nothing is coming up soon.
Okay.
I was about to say, here's what I'm confident to report, which is we are taking 2 full weeks away from the internet and away from talking about ourselves. And maybe after we have taken a series of consecutive naps, there will be a different answer to this question. But like right now, the answer is just like rest.
Okay. And you're more than entitled to take all the time and rest because you have been on 1,000,000 podcasts talking about this book and doing so much great stuff. And the book is so great. So I'm always loath to ask that question because I do feel that it's pushy, but then the other part of me is very curious if there's something coming. I want to know.
No, it's not pushy. It's not pushy at all. I think we are, it's like prioritizing rest after you make something big, I think should be part of the process.
Yes.
It takes a lot out of you to write a book or even just to verbalize big ideas that you've had. And I think that, part of what I want part of my creative practice to be is that I do take some serious time between projects and I take time to think about what else I'm curious about or what else I want to do. And, this has been really, really, really fun. And I'm excited for whatever else we work on in the future, but right now in the immediate, I am very excited to have a break.
That's so good. It's so good for us to take that time. Last one. If you could have any person read this book, who would you want it to be?
That is a good question. Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's not a name, but I think that the idea that people who are in charge of thinking creatively about policy and about the way that at that level we encourage relationships like friendship, that is very exciting to me. So yeah, I guess now that I say that out loud, I'm I should just be sending this to politicians' offices right now.
Wow.
But yeah, that's my answer.
Talk to me. Let's make the mailing list when we hang out.
Truly.
That is a perfect answer.
Really good. Well, Aminatou and Ann, thank you so much for being here. Everyone, you can get your copy of Big Friendship wherever you get your books. I'm going to plug again the audiobook. It's very, very good. Maybe you get the audiobook for yourself. You get a hard copy for your big friendships in your life and you pass it out. I don't know. That's up to you, but definitely check out the book. You can also find them on their podcast, Call Your Girlfriend. Ladies, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so
much for having us. This was a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will see everyone else. We will see you in the stacks. Thank you all so much for listening. And of course, a huge thank you to Aminatou and Ann for being our guests. We will be discussing The Undocumented Americans by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio for the Stacks Book Club on September 30th with our guest, Lupita Aquino. Please make sure you're subscribed to this show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. And check out the website, thestackspodcast.com. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite and our theme music is from Tigirigis. Will Sterling does our production and sound editing. This show was created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.